Now, the problem I want to talk about tonight is the problem of belief. What does it mean to believe? We use this word all the time, and I think behind it lurk some really extraordinary taboos and confusions. What I want to argue tonight is that how we talk about belief, how we fail to criticize or criticize the beliefs of others, has more importance to us personally, more consequence to us personally, and to civilization than perhaps anything else that is in our power to influence. So what is belief? Well, beliefs are representations of the world, clearly. They're mental representations of the world, but they're not only that. A belief is a representation of the world which is taken to actually represent the world, which is to say, it's taken to be true. This is what separates beliefs from suspicions or hopes. This is why beliefs can really guide our behavior. We all believe that we were meeting here for a talk at 7:30 tonight. Anyone who thought the talk was going to start at 8 will be wandering through the door in a few minutes. Beliefs organize our behavior. Just imagine the change in you, neurologically, that would occur if you came to believe suddenly that this building was about to collapse. Mere words, someone would just come into the door and say, "Run for your lives." And if he looked like a plausible version of a fire marshal, you would have a very different state of being, emotionally, behaviorally. So that the fact that you're content to even stay seated here at the moment rests very much on what you believe to be true about your circumstance. Now, I want to talk in particular about religious beliefs, and this is where we may run into some difficulty, because I'm going to say some very nasty things about religious belief, and some of you may get offended. I know you're a very reformed, moderate bunch, but some of you undoubtedly will get offended. I want you to notice this process, the dynamics of it. If I say something and the walls start to go up in you, I want you to remember just what it was. Presumably I haven't said anything offensive yet, and we're still having a conversation, but as you'll see, I think conversation really is the issue. And what prevents it, what derails it, is really the challenge for us to specify as a species, really. Now, there's a taboo here that has already begun casting its shadow over our conversation, and I want to make it explicit before violating it. It is taboo in our society to criticize a person's religious faith. I know fundamentalists complain a lot about having their beliefs criticized. Not the way I'm about to criticize them. It's taboo even to notice the differences among our religions. It's taboo, for instance, to even notice that certain religions lead to violence in a way that others don't. Certain religious doctrines promulgate violence. Now, what I argue in my book is that these taboos are offensive, deeply unreasonable. But worse than that, they're getting people killed. And this is really my concern. My concern is that our religions, the diversity of our religious doctrines, is going to get us killed. I'm worried that our religious discourse, our religious beliefs are ultimately incompatible with civilization. It seems to me to be absolutely obvious that there is no future in which nuclear-armed fundamentalist regimes will live side by side with one another and manage to keep the missiles happily in their silos indefinitely. People really believe that certain books were written by the creator of the universe. Given the contents of these books, people really believe that death in the right circumstances is the highest good. People really believe that such a death can't come soon enough for themselves and even for their children. People are really motivated by these beliefs. So I wrote The End of Faith because I believe that the concessions we have all made, you have all made, religious moderates especially have made, to faith in our discourse. These concessions have rendered us powerless to really resist the encroach of fundamentalism, and therefore religious extremism and religious violence. These concessions, I think, prevent us from ultimately protecting civilization from its genuine enemies. Now, before I start careening into blasphemy, I want to put something to the fore because you're going to lose sight of it, I guarantee you. I take ethics and spirituality very seriously. I think ethics and spirituality are the the only game in town, ultimately. They lie at the core of what is most beautiful and profound and necessary in our circumstance as human beings. But what I'm asking you to entertain is that there is nothing we need to believe on insufficient evidence in order to have deeply ethical and spiritual lives. There's nothing that we need to believe on insufficient evidence to invoke the power of ritual, to build beautiful sanctuaries, to come together as communities. Now, we're all familiar with this notion that you should respect another person's religious beliefs. Your neighbor has the right to believe whatever he wants to about God, or the moral structure to this universe, or what happens after death, and you should respect these beliefs merely because he believes them. Does this sound strange to anybody? Where else do we play by these rules? When was the last time any of us was admonished to respect someone's beliefs about history, or biology, or geography? If someone comes into this room and claims to believe with all his heart, down to his toes, that Tennessee is on the west coast of the United States, you are under no obligation at all to respect him for it. And you're certainly under no obligation to give him a job as a fighter pilot or an airline pilot. Now, what we do in every other area of our lives is, rather than respect somebody's beliefs, we evaluate their reasons. If a person's reasons behind his beliefs are good enough and he can articulate them, you will helplessly believe what he believes. That's what it is to be a rational human being. Beliefs are contagious if they're backed up by reasons, except on matters of faith. So what is faith then? Now, clearly we use this term in a variety of ways, in at least two ways, and there's only one sense of this term that I'm criticizing. And there's a very ordinary use of faith. We talk, for instance, of having faith in yourself. All of us have to live our lives in the context of uncertainty, and this kind of faith is just a positive orientation toward life. If anyone needs a written guarantee before they get out of bed in the morning that the day is going to go well, they're going to have profound difficulties living their lives. So we need to be able to work and live in the context of uncertainty, and in the context of very troubling certainties, like the certainty of death. So there's nothing wrong with this kind of faith. But this is not the faith that has given us religion. The faith of religion is belief on insufficient evidence. Religious faith is the presumption of knowledge that certain facts are true, that certain books, for instance, were written by God or otherwise inspired by God, that certain historical figures were divine or something more than human. And we rely on faith only in the context of claims for which there is no sufficient sensory or logical evidence. Otherwise, you would never think to invoke faith. If you are standing on the mountaintop and the voice of God is booming at you from the whirlwind, when you come down from the mountain and somebody asks you, why do you believe in God? You are not going to invoke faith. You're going to say, I was there. God spoke to me. I heard him. There is no satisfactory explanation for my experience apart from a supernatural visitation. And that's what I'm calling God. If your child gets cancer and the doctors say there's nothing that can be done for her, and you convene your church or your synagogue and the congregation prays over her and she gets better, I can guarantee you that for the rest of your life, if someone asks you, why do you believe in God? That is going to be the first thing that comes to mind. The doctor said she was going to die, we prayed over her, she was healed. Okay, that is not faith. That is a reason. That is an evidentiary frame of mind. That is practically science. It's not good science. It's not a double-blind study. It should be obvious to all of you that there is room for wishful thinking and sheer coincidence to intrude there. But where we have reasons, where we can have just even a semblance of a reason, we seize upon them. So one of the things I argue in my book is that no one is content, really, to rely on faith. Faith simply greases the wheels of cognition in the meantime, allowing us to take on board representations of the world that are presumed to actually represent the world. They're presumed to be true. It's presumed that Jesus really was the Son of God, or that a cracker literally becomes Jesus if you say the right Latin words over it, or that there is a God who can respond to prayer. And we presume these propositions to be true in the absence of sufficient evidence. Now, undoubtedly, there are people in this room who are going to want to say that faith is something else entirely. It's a inner knowing, it's a movement of the heart, it is some other kind of esoteric experience. What I'm arguing is that that is not what billions of people on this earth mean by faith. Now, the faith of billions, these incompatible claims about the divine origin of certain books, this faith has divided our world, has balkanized our world into separate moral communities. Christians, Muslims, Jews, Hindus. This is a problem. These are divisions in the human community over which conflict is inevitably happening. Either you believe Jesus was the Son of God, or you don't. If you do, if you believe that there's no path to the Father but through the Son, it is impossible, logically impossible, emotionally impossible, for you to really respect the beliefs of Muslims and Jews. Those beliefs lead to damnation. When the stakes are this high, when calling God by the right name can make the difference between eternal happiness and eternal suffering, it is impossible to respect the beliefs of others who don't believe as you do. So this is why the heretic is actually far more dangerous than the child molester. The heretic next door, if he articulates his heresy, stands a chance of damning the souls of your children for all time. If you really believe this stuff, if you really believe that a certain book was written by God, it becomes quite reasonable to treat heretics very badly. What do we do to child molesters? We lock them up. What did we do to heretics for centuries? We burned them alive. This was reasonable, given what we believed. The patriarchs of the Western tradition, the great men still taught to all college freshmen, St. Thomas, St. Augustine. In Aquinas' case, he thought heretics should be killed. Augustine thought they should be tortured. Augustine's argument for the torture of heretics inspired the Inquisition. Now you may say, we don't torture heretics anymore. But we have secularism to thank for that. We have centuries of secular dialogue, secular politics, and scientific insight. We now know that when the crops fail, it wasn't because a jealous neighbor cast a spell. We know that epileptics are not possessed by demons. We know this by virtue of science. So centuries of secular conversation have essentially edited our faith, and even the faith of fundamentalists in the West. But the same is not true at the moment in the Muslim world. Specifically, the crime of apostasy, the disavowal of your religion, this is still punishable by death everywhere under Islam. Now, how often that sanction is carried out changes from country to country, but the fundamental problem here is that it is a normative conception under Islam that the disavowal of the Quran, the disavowal of your religion as a Muslim, is punishable by death. You never hear moderate Muslims saying it isn't. Not even Cat Stevens, an ex-hippie rock star, can tell you that it isn't. This is why scarcely a sensible sound in defense of Salman Rushdie emerged from the Muslim world in the aftermath of Khomeini's fatwa.